Just pretend that I didn't do that. And
people can join in on the conversation.
Now we're live.
Anytime.
Just like that. Just like that, folks. Welcome if you're tuning in live. If you're on the podcast, you just got a good laugh. Not the first time. Not the first. Won't be the last either that I make a mistake like that. But to get back to your point, so last episode I was saying that I am bummed out. Like, I am a little sad that all this was happening. Now that it's happened, I've kind of turned the page, right? It's okay, it's done, it's over with. You have, like you said, as far as marks go for Overwatch League this year, you've had Sinatra leaving, you've had just Corona borderline destroying what you thought was going to be Season 3.
The hero band fiasco of going to it, switching back, going to, like, just the back and forth, that inconsistencies that have happened there.
The season hasn't been ideal, but it's the season.
Contenders disappearing.
Yeah.
Literally disappearing in front of our eyes.
But it's the season we have. So it's the season you got to live with. I will say it is, I think the more kind of crazy thing to me is how fast it all happened, and now it's just turned into a what if scenario. What if Corona never happened? If the season just went on business as usual, would we have seen this same scenario? Was this inevitable? Was it unavoidable? The players and the org they weren't clicking heads to begin with, and so we were going to see them split eventually? Or was it the stress from the traveling and trying to figure things out? I think we would not have seen this happen if it weren't for Corona.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, unlike the Sinatra situation, where I think that move was happening regardless, Corona came or not. I do think Cilantro was just getting tired of the game and ready to make the switch. I don't think this roster would have broke up had Corona not come into play, because the issue then really stemmed from them wanting to go home, during this, and not playing, NA. And then obviously when it went online, like, having to come back probably put a lot of stress on them. But yeah, had Corona not happened, I do think we would have seen this roster at least play out through this year. Even if these guys were uncomfortable with being in NA, I think they would have gutted it out, because they all would have been together. They wouldn't have been isolated in different apartments or however they have them set up over there. It still would have been like a sense of unity, because you have all your managers, team personnel around. Like, you kind of feel like a family in those environments, right? Just like us going into the office, like having your peers around you. It's still different than doing the work from home. Doesn't mean I hate it, but it is very different than what my normal day-to-day is. So for them, had they had the chance to at least go through this together, I think that really would have helped and possibly salvaged the situation for this year. Maybe not beyond. Like, I do think that they wanted to go back home ultimately. So maybe Season 3 of Overwatch League would have been a different story for Vancouver, or whatever, Season 4.
Well, their third season.
Yeah. I do think this year they would have finished it off.
I think there are many factors on here, and I don't want to get on a tangent, because I will get on a tangent about this. Let's not get that mistaken. But we've even seen, like, in the Titan statement, they mentioned that, part of the issue is that when everything happened, the players were in Vancouver. Then the org made a decision, say, let's send you guys home so you can be with your family through this crazy times. We'll figure it out from there. You'll just play in the Asian division. Okay. Easy enough. That's how it was going to happen. Then, not that easy. The org was like, this is way too difficult to manage. Our audience can't find you. They won't be able to watch you, or at least our core audience won't be able to. I think a little dumb on their part, considering these guys were our former runaway. The number one, not even just Korean fanboy team, but just Overwatch team in general, when they were a contenders team and they won the Korean division. They were the best team ever. So
they could have potentially had more people watching in Korea than they would have had over here looking for Vancouver.
I 100%. I bet you it would have at least been close. So I don't really understand that. But what I do understand from the org's point of view is they didn't pay $20+ million for their players to be in Korea. And I
But
get
they
that.
shouldn't have sent him back in the first place.
And I agree. I agree. From a player standpoint, it's like, bro, we were there. We were home. Now you want to bring us back. But from an org standpoint, if I can just play devil's advocate and not be on the player side for just a minute, they didn't pay $20 million just to have them play in Korea. They didn't build them state-of-the-art training facilities so they could be in Korea. They, are probably paying for housing or wherever in Vancouver, okay? They didn't do all of this stuff to set up a team and then for them to go back to Korea. They have everything here. And again, if I can just be anti-player Tim right now, I don't think that's necessarily unfair of the org to think, hey, these guys signed these contracts to be professional players. I'm going to expect them to act like professional players and be here and train and be with the team and not wanting to go back to Korea.
Yeah, two takes on that. So the first take is nobody could have predicted the situation that we're in, right? So feeling the way that they feel and being isolated here, I get where they're coming from and maybe wanting to go back home because of the situation that we're in. And I don't blame the org. I don't blame the players. It's just a really shitty situation for everybody. But on the other hand, I 100% agree with you where the org could have just put their foot down and be like, hey guys, we're going to finish this out over here. At the end of the year, if we want to disband and y'all want to go home and find a team in Asia, great. Like, y'all can do that. We'll give you the opportunity to do so. We won't hold buyouts over your head or whatever. They could have negotiated something that way. It's still dumb in my mind, though, for the team let them go. So when you let them go in the first place, now it's on you. Whatever happens after that, I do blame you for in that sense. I'm not blaming the player for being upset that the org is asking them to come back after you just sent them home. Imagine how pissed we would be,
Right.
in that situation. So I get where the player is coming from there. That's probably the one part of this that kind of irks me, right? Is you let them go. You let them go home. Don't ask them to come back. You figure it out in that situation because you made that decision. If you made the wrong decision, well, that's on you. But ultimately, because of everything that's just surrounding us right now, it's hard to completely put blame 100% on one or the other. Like, nobody knows how to handle this. We're seeing that across all esports. We're seeing that in CS, of all things, that's been online for the last 18 out of the last 20 years, has been an online esport for the most part. And so we're seeing struggles everywhere. So that will allow me to kind of take the blame off of both of them just a little bit. Like, they're both at fault to an extent, but at the same time, what do? Like, we're all learning.
And the other side of this is now you have, I think Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken, they haven't really played that many teams. Let me see how many games Vancouver has played, because a lot of people are like, oh, now they're in the middle of the season. Well, remember, the Overwatch League this year is just a complete mess where some teams have played a lot and then others not at all. So it is a complete mess. So now they're in a situation of, okay, who are we going to sign? Clearly, there were rumors just last week talking about, well, maybe they'll sign the Gen G roster. Not a chance in hell, because they're still a Korean team. I looked it up. They would be. Could you imagine if they just turned right around and signed a Korean team? I don't know why that was even a discussion for some people.
That would be one of those that would hop very quickly into yikes of the week at that point. Should that have happened, and then we could have sat there and placed 100% blame on the org at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would have been a dumb move all the way around.
Yeah. So there's that, but now it's pretty much a well-known fact that they will be signing the Contenders team second win, an NA-based roster, with even some Canadians on it. So they probably will find more comfortability, if that's a word. They'll be more comfortable with that roster. This is my beef with this, Anuj, is, of course, and this is not on Vancouver at all. At this point, you just sign whatever warm body will sign with you at this point. Is like this, the Overwatch fan, they're a unique group of people. I don't understand their their blinding support for anything Overwatch League. And listeners of this show know I love the Overwatch League. I mean, we talk about it all the time. You put a live Overwatch event up against any other esport event. To me, it's one of the most exciting esports to watch in person. Like, something about the chaos of the game, it draws you in live.
Well, and the fans are good fans.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's not like the fans for that game are diehard. So when you go to these events, like we've been to the last two, championships, and it's very hard to beat the environment that we've been
Yeah.
in,
But that
so.
being said, their blind support for the game, I think, also clouds their judgment on reality. Because you have all over Twitter and Reddit now people getting excited because, oh, they're supporting Tier 2 Overwatch by signing a Contenders team. See, all these people saying Contenders is dead. That's not true at all. They just signed a full-on roster. I say to that, A, what other choice did they have? And B, you're ignoring the fact that the only reason this was an option is because Tier 1 Overwatch is now struggling. You just had the number one team at the end of last year. They finished the playoffs in second, dropped their roster because not because of performance, not because because they couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, they picked up the best available. They didn't pick up the best team. They picked up the best available squad, and that was a tier 2 team. Part of the reason this tier 2 team is completely available is because they killed off their contenders league, which was supposed to grow people into the scene like naturally, right? You're supposed to have this organic growth from contenders into the scene, but none of these guys are tied to a roster anymore because there is no contenders. So, hey, they were available. You got them. You're ready to go. But yeah, you just went from being one of the most dominant teams in the league to, we can say as of right now, they're the worst team, right? Because they're all 5 coming from contenders. So they're naturally going to at least start off at the bottom of the barrel and have to prove themselves, right? To show, hey, they belong and they can play and they can do it. And maybe they can. Maybe it's a great pickup and these guys are incredible. But as of right now, you went from the second best team in the league from last year's standings to bottom of the barrel in less than half of a season. And you're starting over. And so they took what was available. I get why they made the move, but this was not in support of
No.
tier 2 Overwatch. This was, hey, who can we get to finish out the rest of this year? Because we're obligated to finish out the rest of this year.
Yeah, this isn't a testament to how strong the tier 2 or the farm system is for the Overwatch League. This is not a testament to that at all. Again, it's just another black mark on the league in general, which brings me to my next topic on this one. If you want to just branch off for a little bit, is this is definitely the season for the people. There are a lot of people right now, Nuge, that are happy with what's going on with the Overwatch League. Now, just because we are willing to point it out and discuss it does not mean that we are happy about it. We have friends who have worked for the league, are still working for the league. We have no reason to want this to fail. In fact, I would love to see it succeed because I've always been a big supporter of the franchise model. I would like to see that more. I like it coming from traditional sports. Well, it's just something that I like.
People need to understand, like, what Blizzard did with Overwatch League is they stepped out onto a branch that nobody else was willing to risk. Like, nobody else was willing to do what they were trying to accomplish with Overwatch League. And they took a huge risk in doing that. And right now you would say, hey, it's not paying off, but it's opened the eyes of a lot of other leagues to show that maybe this is like the model to go if we want to see, growth in our esport, right? Like, not keep it, where we're the current state that it's in. And so I commend them for doing that. Like, that was a big move. And you're right. Like, there's so many people besides the players that are involved in these leagues, from personnel at Blizzard that are tied to event organization, producers, directors, your play-by-play, your commentators. Like if Overwatch League fails, a lot of people lose jobs. It's not just these players, teams that you don't like, so you're not rooting for those players and you're just happy to see that team fail. Like there are hundreds of people that get affected by something this big, and not only that, the ripple effect that this is going to have across esports because of the amount of money that was invested by each team to get into Overwatch League. Think of all those investors, how scared they would be to reinvest into another league that's going to go out there and charge 10, $20 million for a slot. Like the damage is so extended just beyond the league of Overwatch itself, the game of Overwatch. It would be widespread damage across all of esports. And to see all these big figureheads within esports that have said on record that they're not rooting for Overwatch to fail, but the moment there's a hiccup, they're the first to hop onto Twitter to bash them, to kick them while they're down, to not show support. To laugh in their face. You see it over and over again, and it's just disappointing. And this is coming from even people that were involved with the growth of the league and being there from day one, that still probably have many friends that are involved in the league. And to see them like talk that way about it and to see their true feelings is really disappointing. I mean, you can't tell them how to feel. That is what it is. But it is really disappointing to see these people that are big in the scene root for the failure when they, more than anyone, should understand the widespread impact that this would have across esports.
Yeah, it's just it to me too. It shows kind of the hostility that's between scenes in esports, and just kind of like the two-faced nature that how quickly, like, not generally people, but just scenes can become, right? And how some of these guys, like, I'll throw a name out there. I'll attach a name to this topic. But like Monty, to me, Monte Cristo, former, like the guy, and I get why he would be bitter towards Overwatch League. I'm not saying he needs to be a cheerleader for him, right? There's a way to be politically correct about the way you talk about it. But like for him to be like, this is why I got out. I knew it. I knew this was going to happen. Bro, this is not why you got out. You got out because they weren't giving you what you wanted from it. Like we all read the articles. We've all heard the news when you dipped. Like this wasn't, it's not because you saw it going in this certain direction or you knew it was going to collapse. It was just, it's not, they didn't cater to you. So now what? You want to spite them by being happy that it's crumbling? To me, it's in poor taste, and it kind of, like you said, from an outsider's perspective, where you're like, oh, see, like, so these guys are your big talking heads of esports, and they're saying it's not financially viable to do this type of stuff. Well, then why am I going to get involved?
You wonder why the communities of games are so toxic, and it's because the biggest figureheads of the games are generally toxic people. Like you see it quite often.
Yep. And again, they'll turn around and say that we're wrong. They're saying that we're #fan logic and you're idiots. Look at this tweet that I tweeted once. It's like, guys, everyone can read between the lines. Everyone can know where your allegiance lies. And it's like I said, it's like, I get that you are bitter. I get that some of these guys are bitter towards Blizzard and Overwatch League because, yeah, we said it on the show. Like, the way they handled the layoffs and the firings after Season 1 was like a shit move by the league and by Blizzard's part. We've had friends that were let go from that. But at the same time, life goes on. The league continues. Why not encourage it to succeed and your friends that were there to still succeed?
Yeah, and like encourage, like show them how to get better. If you think they're doing it completely wrong, come in with the contribution rather than just negativism all the time. Like that's really what we see. It's funny because we don't see the same type of animosity between traditional sports. Like
no,
I don't see hockey knows their place in the world. You know what I'm saying? And I say this, I love hockey. You and I have both grown up playing hockey. We've played it for 20 plus years, fairly competitively, and I love the sport. But hockey knows
The
their
weirdest
place.
thing that we have in common.
Yeah, it actually is very random. And our love for esports, Tim.
That's true.
But yeah, like it's just it's hockey caters to their fan base. They know what their fans want. They know, generally if you haven't been to a hockey game, you should go. It's incredible. It's one of the best live experiences there is in sports to me. But their games in the way that they handle the game, the way that they interact with the crowd, I feel like is really catered towards like their fans. And in esports, um, we try to feel like we need it all. We need to have everybody love our esport. And if you don't, you're the weirdo. You're an outcast, And it's weird that we don't see the same level of respect between games like you do between traditional sports. Like it's just a very different. Maybe it's the youth that's involved in esports, and there's a lot of testosterone running around, and people don't know how to be proper almost anymore, like how to be polite, how to be a good human. Like we lack that, unfortunately, like in society nowadays in general. Like it's
I
just
think
that's not there.
I will say to it that I think there might be something to the youth factor in the sense of like you have guys in your 30s playing with kids in their 13 years old, right? And who knows? Maybe that I don't know who in that situation hurts more, right? But you bring it back to the traditional sports. I think of like the XFL. Everyone was excited when that came up. Even the NFL was tweeting about it, like wishing them the best of luck. And now that they had to fold again because of Corona, right? Just another victim to all this, that they were doing fine from what I could tell. Everyone liked it. Everyone was watching the games. But you didn't see like when the XFL announced that they had to hit pause and for right now not coming back, right? You never know. But you didn't see, or at least I didn't, NFL talking heads like
Roger Goodell come out and be like, suck it.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't
Knew y'all
have
were gonna
guys
suck.
go up to them and be like, so you tried stepping on us, huh? Like, no. But yet in esports, point in case, Valorant. Valorant's just the new kid on the block. Riot has said all the right things. We're not thinking this as a big esport. We're not going into this thinking it will be the number one esport. We want to make a fun, competitive game first, and then worry about the esport later. Now, whether or not you believe all that, that's a completely different argument, but they are saying the right things to not make enemies. And yet, it is still like, it's still looked as the devil from the Counter-Strike community.
But the Counter-Strike community is also the one that, for whatever reason, goes directly after the Overwatch League community when there's not much crossover. I mean, there's really no crossover between the games, right? But yet they made it a point to beat on Overwatch as much as they possibly could. They don't really do it towards Call of Duty because it's a console game, so you don't see it there. But yeah, with Valorant, it's 100% been that way. It's been so toxic towards the game, the developers, why they don't like it, like, oh, it's different because of this. Well, yeah, they're not trying to make the exact same game. They took pieces of it that they liked and implemented it into the game that they wanted to build. But the Counter-Strike community, unfortunately, as much as we love them and we're part of it, we're as much involved in the Counter-Strike community as the next person, if not more. And it's our baby too, and we don't ever want to see Counter-Strike come down. But I respect the people that are out there on the grind that are trying to do something good within esports. Maybe it's because of our line of business, Tim. I don't know. We have to talk about esports, so the more esports there is to talk about, the better it is for us. But I don't feel like I look at it the same way as like a traditional Counter-Strike fan is viewing this right now. They really have a fog over their glasses that they need to wipe off and understand rooting for these games is just going to benefit you. Look at what Valorant is going to do for Counter-Strike. Just think about it. And I'm going to say some of that stuff because we're going to get into that in our next topic. But just think of if Valorant becomes a great game, I promise you, you will love Counter-Strike 10 times more because of what it'll drive the devs of Counter-Strike to do for your game just because there's a competitor on the scene. And so some people don't see the bigger picture, man. They're very short-sighted. Everybody is a threat. They're going to treat it that way, and it's unfortunate.
Well, let's hop right into the next topic then, our kind of state of CS, if you will, or we touch on some bigger news and talking points for CS going around the internet. Do you want to just make the transition then, talking about the effects of Valorant, or do you want to talk about some teams first?
Yeah, we could talk about some of the effects of Valorant. I don't think it's like necessarily like anywhere near what we are going to see in the future for CS, right? I do believe Source 2 is around the corner. We've talked about that. I do believe they're now going to add a better casual game mode, right? To keep the casual fans playing, because the games are so different from a casual game to a competitive game. Like there's no overlap between them. You're not getting the same experience. Have they changed that? Have they made that a thing in Counter-Strike yet? I don't think
No,
so.
not that I know of.
There's still like big things I think ahead for Counter-Strike that are in the works that we haven't seen yet. But there are little things that we're seeing, right? Like you see some of these stability issues, FPS like cleanup issues, like little things for optimization.
I think the biggest thing, and this kind of all goes into that line, is things that we never really saw out of Valve with Counter-Strike is quality of life changes. Right? Yeah. They would do the balance updates and the big things here and there, but like the little quality of life of like how long did it take them to add a crosshair maker editor in game, right?
Yeah.
Like
forever.
How long did it take them to do that? And it's just they were very
all
slow
it took
on that.
was one video of alpha to come out for Valorant for Counter-Strike to be like, oh yeah, well, let's add an editor in the game for this, like that. It's such a small thing, but it's such a big thing. It's such a convenient thing. Another thing that I think is quite interesting is like the new kill feed update. Counter-Strike has notoriously just shown you if you got a kill, if there was an assist tied to it, and that's really about it.
Headshot.
Headshot. Would show you that kind of stuff. But now you're able to see, flash kills through smokes, no scope kills, like little things like that A, make it better for the viewer, and then B, as a player, a cool little thing to see, it's just more to trigger the opposing team because now they know how they got killed.
I'm overanalyzing this 100%. I know I'm overanalyzing this. I wish for pro matches they didn't do it. Less information.
Why not?
Less information, the better, I think, for the competitive side.
Like what is knowing that somebody got a no scope kill? What does that do?
Not so much the no scope, but like the smoke, right? Like, because let's say I had a smoke on the left side, right? I'm coming through, I'm Inferno running down mid. Okay, and I'm pushing A site, and I'm terrorist, so I'm going through mid. I can look left, right. I got boiler. I got awning. There's a couple angles on the right hand side. You got a couple angles on the left hand side that they can be peeking from. Well, if I all of a sudden peek that and I die, I necessarily don't exactly know where they could have been, right? But if that smoke was on the left-hand side and then I saw that they shot me through a smoke, I know they're on that left-hand side now, as opposed to, oh, did that come from boiler? I don't know.
Yeah, the radar 100% for Counter-Strike is
overanalyzing, but I'm just saying on the pro level.
There could be very few instances where that could give some additional information that maybe they weren't able to obtain. But the radar system in Counter-Strike is also so intuitive and so good, I feel, that you can get that information with the sizing of your map and how it's displayed, because it does like ping somebody. So you should usually have an idea of where it happened from. I think it's just better for the observing. But I see where you're coming from. Yeah, probably a little nitpicky in my mind on that.
Yeah, like I said, that's nitpicky.
But
it's
overall,
overanalyzing.
Probably a good just addition, just something to keep it fresh. Adding a little 1v1 mode. Again, it's basic, but you used to have to go download a custom map to like hop into a 1v1 type thing. And again, just more options for the player base. I know, I don't want to talk about like gun tweaks and all that. That's kind of an ever evolving thing
Yeah.
in video games, and really nothing major there. But yeah, I think these are things that Counter-Strike can, will, should do. And they're going to do it now because of the pressure that's applied from a game like Valorant. It's the first competitor, Tim, that Counter-Strike has really ever had that I can think of. Like a true competitor to Counter-Strike, although very different game. I know that I'm not saying they're the same game, but it's really in line, like where people could cross over and still feel like they're getting somewhat of a CS:GO or Counter-Strike 1.6, whatever you want to say, experience. And so, it's like the first time. I really can't think of another game where it's a 5v5 competitive shooter where I've been like, wow, this is like CS. Like my skill carries over fairly nicely into this game.
Yeah, I've been trying to rack my brain around it, but there really, really hasn't been anything to recent memory. Maybe Battalion tried, but that never really left the ground, right?
Like it wasn't even close though.
Yeah, like
Yeah, like wasn't
some
didn't
games have
even
tried,
get out of beta.
but yeah, never really have gotten close. Yeah, so like I said, I think it's only a good thing, right? We've said it on the show hundreds of times that competition and things like this for CS is needed, especially for a company like Valve who historically moves very slow. Not
Snail's
just
pace,
with,
man.
unless it's Dota, right? Unless you're Dota, you are the stepchild.
Why is that? Because Dota has League of Legends to compete against. They have a real competitor that's bigger than Dota, that they are competing against, and that they have to keep up with, and that they have to give their player base a reason to continue to playing Dota. Yes, it is the love child of Gaben, but they have a true competitor, so they have to be aggressive with how they move in that game. Only competition we've seen for Counter-Strike is crap that we've seen come out of China that's a complete rip-off of the game. Nothing in NA or EU has been close. So, yeah, Dota's only reason I even feel like they're updating that game at that speed is just because there's somebody right around the corner that will take their player base if they don't.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point there. Other some updates or other news for CS that we can get onto are some of these teams right now. And you can get all this. It is kind of interesting, and I don't want to keep beating the dead horse, but it always comes right at the moment. It won't always be like this, right? But right now, when things are shaking up and like leagues are on off season and things like that, it's the perfect time for this to happen. But you can almost, all roads go back to Valorant at this point when you have the discussion, right? And it's vice versa. When you're talking Valorant, all roads go back to CS. Because now you're still having some teams, Anuj, that have not found homes or have completely disbanded. Orglis has disbanded. Swole Patrol still have not really found a permanent home, a permanent org. So, and this all, and even Orglis is, like, I think it was, on Orglis, said on stream, like, 100%, the reason they did not sign with a team while playing in Flashpoint
both leagues
is because Valorant came out and any offer that they had on the table were pulled before they could sign anything because the beta came out.
And that's a team that was in both leagues. That's a team that's competing in the road to Rio. So they had everything lined up for them to be an appealing place for an organization, right? And they folded and now gone on to Valorant for the most part. But it very concerning to see teams not getting signed that are actually talented teams, right? I don't blame people for not signing lower level MDL teams or tier 3 teams. Like, I don't blame you for not doing that because Counter-Strike's an expensive sport to be in, and it's a tough sport to be considered tier 1 in, right? Like, it's a very exclusive group. And even when you're tier 1, there is an upper echelon of tier 1. There's a tier 1A and a tier 1B. And the tier 1A is, Tim, the group of people that get invited to tournaments, right? That consistently get invites that you expect to see at any big event. If there's invite spots, those 5 to 10 teams are going to get invited most likely.
Yeah.
Then there's your tier 1B that we know are good enough to compete against them and that can take a game off of Astralis or that can beat up on Navi from time to time. But hey, you're not big enough to really get invited, whether that's brand name, players, like you don't have the combination of what we're looking for. Then you get into your tier 2 teams. It's already such a big disadvantage to be in that grouping if your goal is to be at the top.
I feel like what's the thing in the ocean where it's like if you're on a boat, if you get past the rough spot, then you're in the clear? You know what I'm talking
You're
about?
talking about like with the waves.
Yeah, the big waves. We're not boat
get past
people.
the swell or whatever. Yeah,
Is
yeah,
it the
yeah.
swell? I don't know. I'm not a boat guy, as you could tell. Though I did have my boating license. The swell. I think you're right, though. I do think it's the swell. And that's where so many tier 2 teams have issues. Point in case, ATK. You have a roster. It's on the rise. It's going great. And then all of a sudden, a big org comes in and either money whips you to sell your roster or just straight up swipes your players out from under you during negotiation. Because obviously, if a tier 1 org is coming to your guys, they're going to sign with them, right? That's just the nature of the business.
Heroic's dealing with that with S-Tag, right? S-Tag's
Yeah.
coming off contract. He's not off of contract until July. Well, a month and a half, 2 months ago, what does he do? He commits to Astralis, and now Heroic's left in the dust with nothing. From having their best player, a team that's competing in the top 10, to losing your best player, and now, kind of being a little lost at times, right? So, yeah, it's a really and Heroic's a tier 1 example in my mind. Heroic's not tier 2 at all. They're a tier 1 team, and even they're getting sideswiped for their best player. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Like, it's very difficult for lower tier, tier 2 or lower teams to get good talent and then hang on to that good talent to where you can grow your brand. If your objective is just to sell players, that's fine. You could probably make decent money and if you have a way to identify good talent early. That's also very difficult to do when people are also willing to take more chances. Jason Lake, for example, he signed OBO and Poison, and OBO was like 4 years old when he got his contract from Complexity. I mean, he's a baby.
Just learned how to sign his name.
And they're willing to take him, and they're, in pro league and getting invited to tournaments. So it's just a tough world out there for, teams outside of the tier 1 scope. And so you feel for teams like Swole Patrol. You feel for an org like Orgless, a group like Orgless. I'm excited to see what they can do in Valorant. I still expect to see more people make that change, and tier 2 CS will get built back up, right? These people that are leaving from tier 2, there's good enough talent, enough young talent in Counter-Strike to build those leagues back up to where it's not like it would be contenders, like where all of a sudden we don't see a tier 2 for Counter-Strike. I don't think that'll ever be the case, but it is more difficult. The barriers of entry have become very difficult, and it's not cost effective anymore to be involved in Counter-Strike, at least not right now. So the way it's going does have me a little concerned, not for the future of Counter-Strike, but for the future growth of Counter-Strike. Like, can we keep it a healthy, living, breathing game and compete at the same time with new games that are going to come out, games that are actively out? There's still a little bit left to be seen from Counter-Strike, and I think they have the opportunity to do it, to grow still. So again, I think this little kick in the butt from Valorant is going to be a great thing for the Counter-Strike scene. Ultimately, although it could be hurting them a little bit right now financially, in the long run, if Counter-Strike or Valve does the right things, they're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah,
I want to ask you a question, Tim.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you have something you want to add to that?
I was just gonna say it to me. I've kind of had my foot in my mouth on this topic a few times because I've often said it's the youths that don't look at Counter-Strike. They look at Counter-Strike and say that's an old game. I'm not gonna play that. But yet we still see, Oboe and Rops and all these simple at one point in time, right? These young kids that come up, Zywoo. Right? These guys that are still young, still playing the game. And it's like, even Nifty, when we had Nifty on the show, talked about how, Counter-Strike was my first PC game. Like, he's like, I just went to it and it felt great. So it still holds that appeal. That's the Counter-Strike, and I will say this. If you really want to say what does Counter-Strike have over Valorant, first off, you know me, I flippin' hate class-based games.
Yeah.
I play them, but I really truly do despise class-based shooters.
There's a number of reasons for that,
Yes,
and I agree.
right. We can have a whole topic on that on another day. Because eventually there's meta and repetitiveness and balance updates, and one person's overpowered, this person's useless. Endless reasons. Counter-Strike is timeless. That's what Counter-Strike has on its side. It is a timeless game. There's a reason it's been around for 20 years. There's a reason that pros have been playing it for 20 years. You and I have been playing it for 20 years. It is a timeless game that I think that's what it will always have on its side.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. Like, it's one of those games where it's purely based on, like, it feels like raw skill, right? Your skill really dictates how good you are in Counter-Strike, not I'm playing an overpowered character that can also elevate my skill level from where it is to make me seem better, right?
Yeah.
Somebody can be playing Raze and they get 3 or 4 ultimates a game, and that could potentially be 7 to 8 kills for free, where if you're not playing Raze and you use an ultimate, you're probably getting no kills for the most part, right?
Right.
Brimstone, a couple examples there, but even then, it's hard to get kills with Brimstone's ult. It's used more to clear out space more than anything,
Yeah.
So yeah, I 100% agree with you in that sentiment with Counter-Strike, because it is timeless, and there's such an in-depth tactical aspect to it. Another thing that sticks out for Counter-Strike when it comes to young people, I just want to tag on to that. This is actually not what I was going to say a moment ago. Counter-Strike pros are really cool. Like,
Yeah.
they're really cool people.
They're fit. Wear Yeezys.
They really, it's such a meme, but they really do dress well. They're generally in good shape because they're taking care of especially the top players from their orgs, like kind of bust your ass into shape if you're an unhealthy lifestyle and this and that. They're tatted up. They're generally dating very attractive people, at least based on Instagram and the ones that I follow and all that. So it's like they're cool.
That's probably why we fit in so well into the scene, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's why Counter-Strike's our baby, right? Like, people look at us and like, wow, these guys are like cool.
Like, you guys you could play Counter-Strike? Whoa.
Like, I don't even get asked if I play Counter-Strike. It's just assumed. They meet me and they're like, oh,
it makes sense.
Counter-Strike guy for sure, and so, but Counter-Strike players are like cool people to look up to, from a young gamer's mind. I could 100% say that and feel very confident that there's not many. Maybe Call of Duty, you could say that about also, because again, dress well, generally, like, just young, kind of in shape kids for the most part there. But what I did want to ask you,
who attract juvie.
Yeah. What I did want to ask you, Tim, is do you think the leagues have helped or hurt Counter-Strike, or indifferent? Like, is it just kind of in a waiting period still?
Yeah, I'm kind of indifferent because realistically, it's kind of what we had before. Like, with Flashpoint, people are like, oh man, there's a new league in town. And we said the same thing, right? It's a good narrative, but it was ECS. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it replaced a league. They didn't add a new league. Sure, different format and rules and ownerships and all that, but that's all for business people, right? If you're looking at it from a fan's point of view, nothing changed. You still have ESL Pro League with a different format, and now you have Flashpoint, which was ECS but different.
I'll tell you why I think from a fan's point of view it got worse. Okay, I understand from the business aspect it probably got better the way that they're doing it, right? Like, they feel like it's more profitable. So I'm not going to talk about the business side, but from the fans' perspective, we used to have 2 leagues with the best teams in it.
Yep.
That played each other often, and you got to see top tier teams go head to head. And you might be one of those people that was like, well, I got so tired of it. Like, it took away from the fact that, like, when Navi and Astralis would meet in a championship, well, we just saw them play last week in ESL Pro League, and like, we've seen these teams go head to head. But like, from my point of view, is like, I want to see the best Counter-Strike I can always see, because I'm not turning on what I would consider lower level CS. I'm not watching those games. I'll go check the score, see what's happening here and there, but I'm not
You're
watching
not
it.
watching Contact versus Sprout.
No, I'm just not doing that. Like, I'm just not going to turn that on. That's not a game that I care about, regardless of the league that they're in.
I would
But
rather watch Hiko play Pugs than that.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
we're being honest.
I'll watch a streamer that entertains me.
Yeah.
Instead of teams that I find to be.
We also saw.
boring.
We just talked about like how scenes have conflict, like Counter-Strike and just hates everything and whatever. Well, they actually created animosity within Counter-Strike, right?
Yeah.
You want to talk about how Counter-Strike is such a hostile fan base to everything, and Overwatch is so defensive, like they're just that beat-up shelter child, right? Well, Counter-Strike's the big bully of the scene because they've kind of been top dog forever. Well, here, no thanks to Thorin and Monty, created within inner scene turmoil. So I think that
It's
also
really
kind of hurt things.
Thorin. I mean, it's Thorin more than
That was
anybody
never,
by far.
That was never there between ECS and ESL. They got along really well.
Because
from
everybody had both teams.
Yeah, they might have not liked each other internally, but from our point of view,
it was fine. Like, you're both running your leagues. You let them play simultaneously. There's usually not overlap between the two and huge conflicting issues. So, like, it was fine. At least you didn't see that animosity. Now, Thorin's lost his goddamn mind.
That guy,
I'm just gonna say it. Like, he has lost his mind. I like Thorin. I really don't dislike the individual. I think he knows the game really well. I love the history that he brings and the knowledge that he has, but he's lost his goddamn mind. Like, he is literally tweeting out, like, rage tweeting at nobody. Like, nobody has said anything. Nobody came at him.
He's old man yelling at clouds.
He just, like, comes outside on his lawn and decides to yell at the neighborhood. Nobody's outside, but he's just that guy on his porch that's just swinging his fist and yelling at everybody that walks by. Anybody that'll listen, he's just out there screaming, calling himself like the Jordan of esports and this and that. And I know some of that's like got to be a troll to a certain extent, but he's making this experience miserable for people that follow it closely, right? Like, the average fan probably does not know what's going on Twitter half the time with Thorin, but he has become a brutal follow for the reason of he's just, like, become this constant asshole all the time, when it's like, that's not really what he was like. He would go at people, but it would be in jest. It would be in fun a lot of the times. It would be a one-off remark about a player that's underperforming here and there. But now it's just these crazy, really tirades that he goes on daily.
Like,
I mean, it's
almost wall of
daily.
text tweets. Like, even in our Discord, if you want, join our Discord. Even our listeners, it's gotten to the point where our listeners are even like, did you guys see what Thorin said? And it's just like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know. It's just...
He just lost his mind.
He's become a character, right? Before, it was always like, hey, Thorin knows his shit, and he backs it up, and if you come at him, he'll come back at you. Well, now no one's even bringing him up. He's just saying this. He's become a character of himself. It's fascinating.
He said something about Riot, like Riot not inviting him or something. Do you know what tweet I'm talking about?
This was my favorite tweet. Other than the fact that he calls himself basically the Kobe of esports, which...
No, he called himself the Jordan of esports.
No, Kobe. He said Kobe. He said Kobe.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah. He definitely said Kobe, which I just laughed because I'm like, I don't think Kobe was ever just an analyst, sir. I think Kobe actually played basketball last time I checked. So, no, you're not anything like Kobe. But okay.
Kobe was a competitor in the game?
He's more like Ernie.
Yeah.
he might be Ernie, but not Kobe. But so your tweet about he all of a sudden goes off on Riot. Thorin goes off on Riot for not inviting them to do things, and they get Tyler 1 instead. Well, first off, Tyler 1 actually plays and supports League of Legends. You talk about it, but bash it all the time. So, of course, the company that runs the game will not invite you. Like, that's pretty common sense. I'm not saying you need to to, get your Riot knee pads out. I'm not saying that, but just understand why they're not doing it, and you're fine.
You can't shit on them and then get invited the next week to an event.
I don't think Epic is going to ask me to come talk Fortnite anytime soon. Like, and I get that. I understand, right? Because I shit on Fortnite all the time. I get it. I get that. But then he turns around and is like, no, not saying I would do it. Like, what?
Like, what are you doing? Like,
you're now that kid who's like yelling at girls to be like, no girl's asking me out. No girl wants to go to the dance with me. And then a girl comes up and asks you to dance, and you're like, no.
No, not interested.
Not interested in you. Like, what?
It's crazy, dude. He's really, like I said, he is.
Maybe we can get him on the show sometime.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. We'll put a call out.
we'll put some feelers out there to get Thorne on the show. I forgot what we were talking about, but the leagues, yeah, like I said, I'm fine with where they're at right now. Of course, one has better teams than the other, but we all knew that going in.
I think the only thing left on the Counter-Strike side, Tim, to kind of wrap up our state of CS is the new rumor that's kind of swirling around Astralis. It has been rumored by Decay and I believe some reports from HLTV as well that are suggesting that Astralis is on the verge of potentially signing not one, but two more players to their active roster on top of the S-Tag move that's going to be taking place in July. So that would give them 8 players on that team. And I'm sitting here thinking like, well, yeah, like Astralis has kind of struggled a little bit, but then you go and look and it's like, well, they're not really like a bad team. It's not like they've gotten bad all of a sudden. They're still winning majority of the matches that they play in. They've just had a little slow start to the year, but hey, it's online and all this shit's going on. Like, you can kind of get a pass right now if you're Astralis, And plus, now you're just counting majors, right? Like that's what it's come down to for a team like that. To have 8 players, I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around the logic for this. I mean, I don't see them replacing 3 guys from the active roster, right? Mm-hmm. I don't really see them even replacing one person from the active roster right now, although if they did that, I could understand slightly where they would be coming from. But 3 seems I mean, again, I didn't even know how I felt about 6-man rosters. I'm trying to wrap my head about how I feel about a potential 8-man roster on the number 1 team in the world.
Yeah, I remember when we talked about like going with the 6-man, and I think we kind of both said the same thing. Like, I understand players having fatigue, so you want to swap them out here and there, but the big picture, and Zonic, God bless you, sir. God bless you. You are hands down one of the best coach in the history of CS. But if you think for a cotton picking minute that I believe you when you say you're bringing on Essex not to be a sub, but to be just like anyone else on the team, the quarantine has gotten to your head.
You're lying.
You are lying. There is not a chance in hell they're bringing on Essex.
S-Tag.
Or S-Tag. Essex. That's one of our listeners that we play Valorant with, which would be even more impressive if they signed him. Shout out Essex. S-Tag. If they got S-Tag to be even sniffing the roster on a permanent basis, then it's like, okay, this is turning into the whole Overwatch League and Call of Duty League issue, where you have your starting roster, but this isn't like a traditional sport where you don't want to start your pitcher every time, right? This is more like the starting QB versus the backup QB argument, where it's like that guy will only see game time if there's an injury or something wrong.
Yeah, or like somebody really needs a break, right? Or, somebody's just mentally fatigued or something. Okay, then yeah, I see swaps coming in. But really, if you start taking over for one player consistently, eventually you feel like that's just ultimately going to be the roster change that takes place, right?
That's just how esports works. You play with your best hand. Look, point in case, look at Florida. Not to get off of CS, but like Pristini was one of the best guys, former world champion, right? defending world champion, if you want to look at it that way, takes a couple events off and now finds himself on the bench.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great example. Yeah, I just don't understand the logic behind having that many players. I think it would cause some confusion, obviously. I think a little bit too much shoulder peeking going on there. Like one guy, okay, I kind of understand, get people on their toes, like get them focused. But now you have three guys, and maybe as a player, you're starting to wonder, like, okay, what the hell are we really?
Yeah.
What are we really doing here?
I wonder what value do you think that the org or the roster, when I say roster, like the original 5, right? When you think of Astralis, what value do they think they're going to bring when they're not playing? Because again, for the most part, they're not going to be playing. They're going to be riding the bench. You got to bring something else to the table because clearly you're not going to outskill them.
Unless it's a thing of because of how maybe the point systems are going to work and you want to be able to attend every event throughout the year, maybe this is a way you do that, right? Like for lower DreamHack events to accumulate some points that way, you can put a roster together for those types of events. I think it all depends on who are the other 2 players that you sign, right? Like how good are they? How much of a threat are they to your core lineup, right? Or are they just like extras and they're there for those different types of scenarios as we've mentioned. So it'll just be interesting more to see who they sign, and then maybe we can speculate a little bit more of how they manage that roster. But if they're to bring on another 2 players at S-Tag's level, that's going to cause a lot of controversy on that team. I feel like I just don't feel like that would be a comfortable situation as a active player on that lineup to see that many players on your bench.
You also have to, though, play that delicate balance with your bench players to make them feel valuable with that roster. Because the last thing you want to do is put a lot of time and investment into the bench players, assuming that they're going to be good bench players and backups, just for them to feel undervalued and then go to another org. Where it's just like, well, shit, we were kind of hoping you would been here. Like, the expectations have to be given out way ahead of time. And they have to be understood by all parties involved, what the expectations are. Because if not, then it's just going to blow up.
Like if you have these guys for buyout purposes to make a little bit of money, okay, great. If there's another vision, hopefully it becomes a little bit more clear after they've signed some players. But until then, it's just a lot of speculation, a lot of uncertainty of what it's going to look like.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of it right now with the state of CS and where we're at with it. Updates trickling here and there. Roster updates, everything there. I know right now the road to Rio is wrapping up. It's in playoffs for NA. I think playoffs are about to start for EU and CIS. It's quite difficult to understand, to be honest with you. So we'll
get back to this around the 17th after they've wrapped up EU, because that's where a majority of the conversation is going to come from, and we'll have at least some playoff understanding and point situation. So we're close to diving in to like competitive CS. I know we've talked a lot about CS in different areas and not so much the competition, but in about a week or so here, we'll really start diving into what's going on in the game.
Yeah, the one thing you need to know for the NA side is Evil Geniuses did not make it.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that.
There's only like 2 good teams on the NA side, and they're one of them. So
yeah, in separate groups, Evil Geniuses and Liquid, and both of them almost didn't make it. So let that sink in. And then today,
they need to be signing the extra players.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's really the NA rosters need to figure it out and just try to monopolize the rosters that way. But anyways, like Anuj said, we'll talk about that coming up in a couple of weeks when everything's wrapped up, just so then we can put a nice bow on it. Real quick, we don't have to dive too far into the X's and O's on this, but I did want to at least bring it up to get what your thoughts were. The T1 Valorant Invitational, T1 Nerd Street Invitational, I should say, ended up, I don't even know when it was. Was it over the weekend?
Yeah, it was this past
Monday? It had to have.
It was it was a weekday.
Because we didn't talk about it on the last episode. So
it all happened in like one day. It was I think it was Monday. It was
First off, T1, Nerd Street. Beautiful. If we can always do these one-day tournaments, you'll make me a very happy boy.
Only when I'm on Corona break, so I can sit there and watch
Yeah,
the whole damn
right.
thing.
Yeah, only it's like on slow days at work, perfect. If work was busy, not good. Not good at
Yeah,
all.
this is all on Monday. It was on the 4th.
So one of the shocking things of this is before the tournament, Gen G announced their new roster. And going into the tournament, unanimously everyone's feeling was, who the hell are these guys? They signed
Bunch of French Canadian kids.
French Canadian borderline no names. I think like a few of them you've seen in the Counter-Strike world, but for the most part, I mean, do you recognize any of them?
No, but like I know they had been doing good in other like Nerd Street tournaments and stuff that they had played in.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
they had
they were
like
actually like their team name was French Canadians.
yeah. So they had like been doing well playing together and showed promise early and Gen G jumped on them, right away and probably got them at a fairly good price. And for them, that's a huge organization to be joining. So, who knows how long contract is for and how all of that's working. I'm sure these are not 2-3 year contracts
No.
that people are signing right now,
Beta
And so,
contracts, pretty much.
look, after Monday, it looks like a freaking good move. Doesn't look bad, right? There was a lot of competition. Tim's talking about the T1, obviously this Valorant tournament that they hosted, and not going to break down all the teams here, but there were some major teams in this event, including the newly formed Sentinels, who have Sinatra and people like Shazam, Dizzy, like very high level names in the competitive scene. Team Brax, who's basically Team T1, along with Elige and Skadoodle. Elige might be needing to practice a little Counter Strike based on how his team's playing, but we'll get to that later.
Or will
Even
he?
Go ahead.
Or will he?
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean,
Maybe
Team Shroud.
Maybe he needs to
obviously
practice more Valorant.
running with Shroud, Hiko, Relics, nothing. So again, a lot of CS talent there. And then even Mousebaz. Mousebaz is basically a big mix of Orglis and a couple of the old CLG guys with Wardell, Subrosa, Drone, and then the CLG guys being Hazed and Cutler. So like I felt like this was one of the more competitive tournaments we've seen from a team standpoint, not counting the ESPN event, which had a lot of huge names in it, but from various scenes, right? Like this was really geared towards people that are playing and focusing on Counter-Strike. Even Team Kurt had like 4 or 5, Counter-Strike players on it. So we really saw, I thought, the most competitive Valorant tournament we've seen till date.
Yeah, I thought it was still competitive. Still, though, what I'm going to say, optimized Valorant tournament. I still feel, and I feel like maybe this is why Gen G did so well, is the way they used the abilities together to complement each other was still... Because, I mean, looking at Team Brax, who they beat in the finals, 100%, you will take the bet 100% of the time that Team Brax is the outright better shooting team, correct? Like, you would never look at that and say, oh, yeah, they come in second to Gen G's roster when it comes to shooting. And I think that's honestly what they rely on a lot. I don't know what T1 is doing at this point in time because we keep seeing them in tournaments, but as Team Brax. Even though you have Brax and AZK, who are both signed with T1, Hiko was on that roster for every tournament coming up. Now Hiko's not there, so the rumorville is flowing around. Well, are you treating these as tryouts and Hiko didn't make it? Like, which would
I think so. I don't think they need to announce that necessarily though either, right? Like the game's in beta.
Yeah.
So for them, they can always just sit there and be like, well, hey, we got a couple of the players that we know we want on this roster, right? Brax, AZK, and Crashies, all 3 confirmed to be on the roster. And those last 2 slots, like, what a gift to be able to jump into tournaments and make those live tryouts, basically, and see how your team meshes. You don't get that opportunity in many games to bring a stand-in, and you see it happen from time to time, but it's not an overly common occurrence. There's also not a ton of people that you get to try out like they're going to have the ability to be able to do. So I do think it's a smart move right now is to be like, hey, these are the 3 that we know we want. Now let's figure out how they gel, what we need, how to fill in holes, character types. Like they can evolve that as the game continues to grow. So playing under the Brax name, even though it's in their own tournament, like I kind of get it because Kurt's also Team Kurt had Kurt who's on T1, Team Sony had Sony who's on T1. So they probably didn't want to give one of the teams the full T1 branding when there's other T1 competitors, there along with them.
Yeah. So I thought, like I said, overall, I agree, it was the best Valorant competition that we've seen so far. Still, though, I feel like a lot of these guys are relying on shooting as opposed to kind of using the game. Because a lot of the complaints have been in Valorant is like the map design. But I think what people are forgetting is that these maps are designed with abilities in mind. It's not just, throwing a molly through over a skybox or things like that, like in Counter-Strike. They are purely built like, okay, on this part of the map, these combination of abilities are going to work together. So I still think it's just going to, again, what we're seeing now is just going to be so different in 6 months.
Yeah, like one person that stood out to me over the games was AZK. AZK looks very comfortable on stage. He plays her very well in terms of boost spots and how to manipulate the wall and things of that sort. So I thought we did see a little bit more of that this time. There seemed to be more team play and continuity throughout the tournament, but yeah, it's not anywhere near where it'll be in due time. But at least I feel like we're seeing it a little bit more. I'm seeing team play, right? We understand that these people are like, they know how to now communicate with one another in this new game, right? Mm-hmm. They're all highly competitive and are doing that in other esports, but it's still a new game and a new way of talking and understanding the maps. And so overall, my expectations for the tournament were not very high, right? They never are for these invitational type tournaments, but I would say it exceeded them. Like I thought, I really enjoyed Team Brax versus Sentinels that happened in round 2. That was a matchup that I badly wanted to see, and we were given that. And obviously, that's Brax's team versus the newly formed Sentinels. I wanted to see Sinatra in what would be considered a difficult matchup and kind of how he played there. Shazam looked great in that game too, and Team Brax was able to pull it out 2-0, but in very close games. It was like 13-12, 13-11. So that was cool. Seeing Shroud's team get spanked round 1, real bad. I think where's it at? I actually had it pulled up.
They got 2-0'd by Mouse Spaz.
Yeah, it was 13-1 in the first game.
And you're thinking, well, 13-1, that's probably on Split. No, it was on Bind of all maps.
Most 50-50 map there is, And so, and then, went to Haven and it was 13-8, but even that was becoming a runaway early on that they had to kind of pull back. So to see them get spanked shows me that it's not just raw skill anymore that's winning, right? Because if you look at Team Shroud, you're like, oh my gosh, like these guys have ballers when it comes to like CS skill, right? And just pure raw aim. But they got outclassed by what we would consider a lower tier 1, tier 2 Counter-Strike team. So that was a fun matchup to see. Ultimately, Sentinels did get knocked out by them. I thought that was probably the biggest upset because Sentinels had played so closely against Team Brax, and then to fall to Team Shroud after they just got smoked was surprising. Tim, though, the French Canadian kids, like these guys came out and they looked really good, and I didn't know who any of them were, but they played well as a team, and they gave us like a hell of a series. They beat Team Brax twice. They beat them in the semifinals 2-0, and then had the rematch in the finals, and that was a 2-1 matchup there, and they earned it. Like I thought that was those matches in particular, I thought were like very well played. They were very close.
And we might not ever see them again in the finals. Who knows, right? Who knows where these guys go? But they will always have this one tournament where they just the Cinderella story, and they were it. So
none of these should count on Wikipedia if you ask me. All these like beta tournaments that we're seeing right now. Like,
you don't.
I don't, or at least these
cabinet.
players better not come to me and tell me about how they won championships in this game, and then they show me an invitational trophy that they're holding
in
up.
closed beta.
Yeah, let's hold off. EU just got the game, I think, yesterday. So did a couple of Asian countries. Let's give everybody a minute.
Right?
Here.
Yeah. No. These definitely do not go in your trophy cabinet. No, not a chance. Not a chance. Let's get into some news. With CS:GO, we had some cancellation announcements, or I'm sorry, rescheduling announcements. ESL One Cologne and IEM Melbourne. The report said rescheduled to 2021.
So it's like, okay.
So are we going to have 2 Colognes in 2021? Like, is that what you're saying? No, they were canceled. No. I don't know. It's funny. DIG qualifies for the Blast Pro Premier, so that's exciting to see. We already talked about the Titans thing. Activision, this is looking at for COD. Huge numbers. Activision Blizzard report that they have generated $956 million from microtransactions alone in the first quarter of 2020.
Look, guys, listeners that are playing this game, stop giving them your money. Stop it. I don't care how much you love this game. Stop giving them your money until they put a freaking product that's worthy of your money. Get me off these 12-tick servers. Put an anti-cheat in place. Get a competitive ranked mode out. You're telling me these guys made $1 billion in 3 months? And they got their foot up their ass when it comes to competitive play in this game? They couldn't promote their pro league if their life depended on it?
It's the casual Warzone player that just doesn't give a rip. That's what it is. They don't care about competitive. They don't care about anything. They just want to run akimbos. You can have 2 skins if you have a kimbo. That's all they care about.
It just kills me to see that in no way. Good. I'm glad they're profitable, but it's like
what kills me is that like there's talks of Warzone like breaking over 60 million players. And all of it's going to go away when the new Call of Duty comes out. All the $1 billion worth of skins people have bought going away with the new Call of Duty. That's what kills me. But hey, they have figured out the formula. So congratulations to Activision Blizzard. So for all these people laughing that Overwatch League is failing and CDL isn't doing well, they're doing just fine. Activision Blizzard is doing just fine. Speaking of, just again from that same report, Modern Warfare has sold more copies and have more players than any other Call of Duty.
It's only because of Warzone, though.
It's only it has
nothing Warzone to do with their MP at all.
No,
just know that.
Yeah, it has nothing to do.
That number has nothing to do with their MP. They broke all these records in the past few months purely because of Warzone. So,
correct. Warzone free to play.
Warzone is free to play.
Oh well, there we go. Okay, so don't give me that crap. Then I don't care about your player numbers on a free to play game. Gunless. Looking at CDL news, Gunless has been benched on the Chicago Huntsmen. A little bit of drama circling this, as he said he didn't. This is a quote from Gunless. I didn't even find out I was benched until Monday. Nobody wanted to say a word to me. Ain't that sad? The only reason I learned that everything was happening was from an effing other people. None of my teammates wanted to say a word to me on what was happening. So this kind of sparked a lot of drama. Real quick, I will say this on this. Very shitty of the org to not say anything. It is not up to the players to say shit when a player is getting benched.
No, the org needs to grow some balls there and make the call, right? Like, you don't let somebody sit in limbo. The players should not know this unless they all know this either, So that's another disappointing thing, is obviously these conversations took place with players because his teammates knew. And so the org knew, the teammates knew, and the player didn't know. And that to me makes no sense. Like, why even do that? Like, are you scared to fire somebody or whatever?
It's time to grow up, Call of Duty. The times of just ghosting a teammate until they get the picture, it's done. You're signing big boy contracts, making big boy money. It's time to act like men. And this isn't just to the players, it's to the orgs too, right? Whether that's Hex who should be telling them, or if it's Hex telling the coach or the GM or whoever to go and tell him what's going on. It's truly
he needs to
unacceptable.
get a call that same day.
It just goes to show how unorganized the Huntsmen are, right? All these rumors flying around, players not liking each other or bickering at each other for being late and things like that. It's just one more peg in the board on why this org is going to slowly become the biggest mess of CDL. What else is happening
here? Big personalities to keep happy over there. Yep. So that's a tough job. JCap benched for Optic Gaming. He was replaced by Chino. JCap, obviously a legendary player in the Call of Duty scene, but Optic has struggled. You know, there's really no easy way to put it. So we knew changes were going to come. Maybe this is just one of many, but it'll be interesting to see where JCap's career goes from here, because you know, obviously it's not a good look when you're the low man on the low team, right? So that's got to be tough for him. But yeah, unfortunately, he's been benched and replaced.
Ubisoft.
I bet he got a call.
At least he was told about it. Ubisoft has announced that Rainbow Six Siege will look a tad different, as they are now having a North American League that's going to start up here in late June. This is going to consist of 2 divisions between America and Canada. So you can find the details online for that, but that'll be somewhat exciting there. So if you're interested in Rainbow Six. In the FGC world, I'm wearing my Mango headband for a reason, and that is because on this day, 6 years ago, Mango signed with Cloud9. So happy 6-year anniversary for them. Unheard of in esports.
That's a very long time.
To be
Elige and like Nitro are like 2 of the only people that I can think of.
Yeah.
Probably been on a team for a similar amount of time.
6 years and still playing at a high level. Insane. So congratulations there. In other news, coming out in 6 days, Halo 2 will be released on PC May 12th for the Master Chief Collection.
I got the flight for that too. I got in early access if you want to come over and play.
Nope, I'm getting into those flights. I'm pretty sure at this point they're giving everyone the flights. I don't think
numbers are dwindling.
I don't think they can
go ahead and open
picky.
up the flood doors.
I don't want to start anything in E-News. I don't want to get into the salt mine on E-News, Anuj. A little surprised on how that's been handled.
Like Halo?
Yeah. Just the PC release.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Maybe we do save that for a conversation.
I just thought there was going to be so much more coming from that, and to hype up Halo 5, to lead into it, and you were going to have tournaments, like through the year tournaments, bringing back veterans and support. They just did so. It's like they pushed for it when it came out for PC. Then controller users got pissed off, and then they backed off and they catered to the controller users. And that just doesn't work on PC. But
it's like not what we were looking for on PC.
It's like, okay, well now it's just Halo on PC with a controller. It's not really Halo with a PC community. It's just
they should have just let people play Reach and all that casually, and then once like Halo 2 and 3 came out, like built up a little bit of a competitive scene there.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, instead of trying to force feed it a little early in that, and not taking the feedback, I think, well for the controller aim assist issue. Like they didn't handle that whole scenario well. So that is concerning for
Halo
the future
5.
of Halo PC.
Yeah. So I think we'll dive a little bit more into that than our expectations with Halo and 343 Studio. Also, the Halo community, as far as like talking heads, the worst about answering DMs to come on the show. The worst. And that is saying something. That is saying something. Halo, you don't have a whole lot going on. You can come on the show. All right. PewDiePie signs an exclusive streaming deal with YouTube. So not necessarily esports, but still a big win for YouTube.
The first deal that makes sense to me.
Yep.
Out of all the deals that have been made, you know, like that makes complete sense for him to sign with YouTube. Big win for YouTube, and obviously he's getting a hefty payday for it, but he was doing well before then. But yeah, that signing to me makes complete sense and feel like will work out great.
And in other breaking news, Amazon is having a PvP shooter. I didn't know about this. And in other breaking news, that shooter is going to be released May 20th.
Yeah. So have you seen gameplay?
No, I literally, when you posted it in our little show notes, was the first time I ever heard about this. It's called Crucible. Is that correct?
Yeah. Don't get overly excited. Um,
I'm
I
not.
really hope that they make this game just to be like a fun game. Don't force esports into this game. It is not going to be an esports title, a successful esports title, I should say. It's like third person Overwatch a little bit, but it's got like a PvE aspect to it also. It does not to me come across as like a competitive esport game, and it worries me because they're calling it like a PvP shooter. So you never know, like, is their mind set on, hey, this is our next big esport? I really hope they just let this just be a fun game. Just make it a fun game. Focus on making your game good. Don't push this into esports because it, in my mind, will not work out.
Yeah, it's their first. I think Amazon's first venture too, right? Into gaming.
Oh, they have their New World game that they have, which is their MMO, and that plays like shit too. So I don't know what we're gonna be getting from Amazon.
All right, expectations are low.
Yeah.
Expectations are low. But that'll do it for this episode of The Center Ring. It's episode 236. It's done. It's in the books. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back Sunday night to record Monday's episode. We got Yikes of the Week. Plenty to get to there. Follow us on Twitter at The Center Ring if you're not doing so already. If you're listening on iTunes or anything like that, please leave a 5-star review. Even if you don't listen on iTunes, if you own an Apple device, you can go in and leave a review. So there's that. We will be on this weekend playing a lot of Valorant. So if you want to get in, we'll probably have a impromptu community night either Friday or Saturday night. So get in our Discord. We will definitely be running some 10-mans, I'd have to imagine, at some point over the weekend. So just keep an eye on there. We'll put that in the chat. I think that's just about it. Perfect.
Beautiful.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you again for so much for listening. For Anuj, I'm Tim. We'll see ya.